and welcome to the Heat Check, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat Show. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. He's available. Anthony, what's going on?
What's up, David? How are you? We've arrived at a very
Actually, you weren't very available last week.
That's true, I wasn't. I was delayed in Boston for like 4 or 5 hours. And yeah, we couldn't do the podcast. But we have that allowed us to do it this week, and we have plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
End of the Heat season, exit interviews, Pat Riley's season-ending press conference. So we're kind of backed up on topics after not going last week.
Yeah, this is what we were waiting. I mean, what were we going to say last week? Like, we got all the fun stuff out of the way with after Game 2, and then the rest of the series went kind of the way that, I don't know, the way Game 1 went, basically, was the next 4 games. So not a whole lot to talk about. Not a whole lot we could assess there because a theme that we're going to have running throughout this whole episode. A lot of guys were not available. Pat Riley, that was definitely the theme of his press conference, his annual, it's always an event, the Pat Riley end of season press conference. And this feels like the biggest one of those since the LeBron, what's the quote, like, it's supposed to be hard, or what? I don't remember the exact quote. It's one of my favorite.
You gotta have the guts. You gotta have the guts and not go to the first door or whatever. Yeah.
One of my favorite like sports quotes of the last I don't know, 10 years, I guess 10 years ago. Pat Riley talks on Monday. He talks a lot about Jimmy Butler, a lot about Tyler Hero, a lot about player availability, as we said, which obviously is kind of the main thing we talked about throughout the season with the Heat. Just before we go into the specifics, any just big picture thoughts coming out of Monday that maybe scattered thoughts that can tee us up for some deeper dives?
Yeah, I mean, he opened the press conference, which went for 43 minutes, and to kind of set everything up, like, I think we were all anticipating, like you said, this Pat Riley press conference because of all the question marks around this roster and Jimmy Butler's extension and entering year 6 of this build. Like, is this going to happen? Is this going to be the same group as, what's the kind of outlook on this roster? And he didn't disappoint. Like, this was the best Pat Riley press conference, or like most telling Pat Riley press conference, most revealing since probably I've been on the beat. Like, there have been some, like those James Johnson years and 2019 before Jimmy got there. Like, there are no obstacles, but there are obstacles. Like, that's
that was a good one.
And they ended up getting Jimmy that year, and like with no cap space, so like it set that up. But this one, it was I spoke to a lot of people who were on the beat in 2014, 2015, those LeBron year, LeBron's final year, the year after LeBron left, the smiling faces with hidden agendas quote from Pat Riley in 2015.
That was 15. 14 was like he kind of called out because LeBron had not made his decision, and that it felt, and in that way, that's why this one felt similar, because it was the most he sent a message when he was doing the smiling faces, hidden agendas. LeBron was gone. He missed his chance. This is Pat trying to send a message going into a pivotal offseason.
Yeah, he was challenging Jimmy Butler. He was challenging the players on the roster to be more available. He opened his press conference. He always has an opening statement. It was a quick one, but just kind of already setting the theme of player availability. We have to look at, take a deep dive into it. We need to be better. Like, this is not a successful formula to have so many guys in and out, no consistency in the rotation. I want a consistent rotation. I'll take guys who play 72 games. Like, just give me 72 at least.
Yeah.
Talking about Minnesota and Boston and Oklahoma City, that their guys like to play. So he kind of set it up, and then all the Jimmy questions came up, and basically you could kind of see the frustration that he had. Like, it wasn't just the fans who were frustrated by this season. Pat Riley was frustrated by this season. It was very evident in the press conference. And he was frustrated by Jimmy's lack of availability, different players on the roster's lack of availability, but Jimmy Butler was at the top of it just because now he wants this extension, right? Like, he wants this max extension. And basically, Pat Riley's like, look, we haven't discussed it. That extension is usually reserved for players who are available every night. Like, he made that comment, kind of, sending a message to him. So it set up, we already knew it was going to be an interesting offseason, but I think this kind of confirmed that it's going to be a really interesting offseason full of important big decisions for the Heat, and it could be a transformative offseason. I think fans left some fans are disappointed by the press conference because Pat Riley made it seem like it's just player availability. If we bring back the same roster, if guys are available and playing, we'll be okay. I don't necessarily think that's exactly what Pat Riley meant. I still think he's not going to say, obviously, we're going to make huge changes. You can't really say that, on May 6th, right?
Especially when it's not like it's been a disaster. Like this season did not go well.
Right. But I think it really could be a transformative offseason, whether it's the Jimmy Butler thing or if a star has to come to the Heat. I think they know there's changes that need to be made, and it's not only it helps when guys are available, obviously, but it's not just that.
Yeah, it's just it did not work out obviously in 2014 when he challenged LeBron and LeBron left. So we'll see what happens with Jimmy this summer. Because it's not. I think you're right that he is he's not limiting it to just if everyone plays, we'll be fine. But he needs to know if guys are going to play to know what he's going to do, right? If Jimmy Butler can't commit to playing more than 55 games a year or whatever, you don't give the extent. It changes everything. If he can, and obviously, you can't just, Jimmy, he got hurt, right? He got hurt in the playoffs. Obviously a lot of his unavailability has been about, maintenance throughout the regular season. I don't know how we want to I don't know what the best way to describe it is. But ultimately when it came to the playoffs this year, he got hurt. And same with Tyler Hero last year in the playoffs, right? He got hurt. So that some of it is stuff guys can't control, but obviously when it becomes a recurring theme, it's something guys generally can control. And, you see for the first time of the Jimmy Butler era and it's a combination, I think, partially of the age, right? 35, probably 36 next year. Partially the contract, they got to make a move one way or the other, probably. Not really, but they got to have an idea of what's going to happen beyond next season. And just the fact the results this year, just coming off a disappointing season, for the first time really in the Jimmy Butler era, I think the Heat have kind of the leverage over the Star where, yeah, they'd love to have Jimmy Butler here and playing at a high level for a long time, but at the same time, if Jimmy won't kind of acquiesce to some of their demands, then they haven't won a championship. The window is getting small quickly.
Right.
If Jimmy doesn't extend long term, they're going to be in a period of transition at some point here, but. For the first time, it won't feel like they're throwing away a team that's in the core mix of until this year, it felt like they were one of the 5 biggest kind of contenders over the last half decade, right? Basically since Jimmy's been there, they've been probably a top 5 team in the NBA. And even after year 2 where they got bounced in the first round, they were coming on. It felt Jimmy was a lot younger. They had more flexibility back then. Now it's really a time to make the move one way or the other here because a lot of stuff is just kind of coalesced at this moment.
Yeah, and honestly, I think about it, and the reason why it's such an interesting and complex situation is I kind of think both sides have a strong argument, right? We think about the case each one will make to each other. The Heat could say, well, Jimmy, you're going to be 35. You want to be paid $59 million when you're 37. You showed signs of decline this year, whether it was because of injury or not. Your numbers at the rim, we've spoken about, David, weren't as good. His production all across the board was down. When you look at just raw numbers, but like you said, his shooting percentage on the rim, his drives, were down. His 3-point shots attempts were up. That's all signs of an aging player. In 2 years, what is it going to look like? Can you still be the best player on a championship contender? That's a real question, right?
Yeah.
But Jimmy could say, well, I've led the second best era in franchise history. I wanted to come here. I'm one of the few stars that made it a point that I wanted to get to the Heat. You guys didn't have cap space. I made it so I could, get here and save you guys from the Hassan Whiteside, Dion Waiters era.
Yeah.
And without me, this would have never happened. And I've taken rosters that probably didn't belong in the finals to the finals twice, to the Eastern Conference Finals 3 times. In the playoffs, I've been one of the best playoff performers in the last half decade, like you said. Like, so I deserve this. Like, I've earned this contract. How could you not give me this when I'm not asking for a 4 or 5 year extension. I'm asking for basically 1 more year of extra money. So I could see both sides, and that's why it's so interesting, I think, because both sides have strong cases. And Pat Riley was asked, like, if Jimmy Butler on July 7, when the extension window opens, if he comes to say, I want this extension, what are you going to say? And Pat Riley said, well, we can either accept or deny. And when I asked him, like, are you guys going to give him the extension? He said, well, we have another year, which is true. It is. Until June 30, 2025. They can wait and say, well, we want to see you be more available this year before we give you the extension. The problem is Jimmy Butler wants that extension.
Yeah, if they say we're not giving you that extension, all of a sudden it gets very contentious.
Yes, and that is the issue. The Heat might want to wait until 2025, until next summer, but Jimmy Butler does not want to wait, and he wants the 2-year, $113 million extension. That is what he's going to ask for. And then we will see what happens, which side will play first. You know, if that means Jimmy just is a quote unquote disgruntled star, if he asks for a trade, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen at that point. If it comes to that, will the Heat just give in and give him the contract and say, well, it's 1 more year, let's just go all in on the Jimmy build? We won't know that until July, August, maybe even September, right before camp, to see how this gets resolved.
Yeah, we're obviously like not behind the scenes, but it'll be fascinating to see what goes on behind the scenes over the next 2 months, and the conversations that they have, if they have them, because like you said, both sides have a pretty strong hand to play here, but ultimately the player, the player always has that extra bit of leverage, I think, where especially Jimmy Butler, who is a pro at, it's been a pretty smooth sailing in Miami, other than like the one, what was that, 2 years ago, the like fight on the bench that I think both of us were like, it's no big deal, and it turned out to really not be any big deal. But the Heat are going to want to talk to him right over the next couple months here and try to figure out where he's at, what his next 2 years can look like, because if he can become like. If he can play not even 80 games a year, 60? If he let's say he plays 65, 70 over the next 2 years, he averages somewhere between those two numbers, like kind of a no-brainer to bring him back, right? Because like, what else are you going to do?
Right.
But if he's, if you're going to go, I don't even know how many games did he play this year? 60?
He played 60 games. And I think the frustration is like last year, I guess it worked, right? He played 64 games, saved himself for the playoffs. He was amazing in the playoffs, especially those first few rounds. Led him to the finals. But even then, Pat Riley revealed yesterday on Monday in the press conference, like he had a talk with Jimmy's agent, Bernie Lee, after last season, after they made it to the finals, basically saying Jimmy needs to be more available.
Yeah. Like
there was a conversation had last season. And I don't know what promise was made or what. He played fewer games this year.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. Like, I know there were a few games in there. Jimmy was sick, whatever. Like, there was some personal reasons, like that he missed a few games also. But I don't know if, like, expecting Jimmy Butler at 35, 36, 37 years old, all of a sudden become more durable and more productive. I mean, Jimmy could try all he wants, but some of it's out of his control. Like, he can't just tell his body, do not get hurt. Like,
I mean, we see he puts, like, the way he goes through these playoff runs, he leaves it all out there. And he's got, even in the playoff run last year, he got hurt in that Knicks series. Like, it's, there's always, because the way he plays is so physical, like the injuries are going to come. But do you know when the last time you played more than 65 games in a season is? I don't know if you like. I'm
looking at it right now. I have this, so it's
kind of crazy.
16, 17. Yeah, the Bulls.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's kind of like, it's been like
a running. There's a bunch of short seasons in there. There's a couple COVID shortened seasons.
Right.
But yeah.
But that's kind of been the Jimmy mystique, right? It's like the calendar of like, I don't care until February, and then in February it's like, okay, now I'm gonna start revving it up, and then playoff Jimmy hits like in March, April. Like that's kind of been the Jimmy mystique. And this year, I think the frustration was, whether you think he was saving himself or pacing himself or whatever, like if you think that, he was saving himself and preserving his body for games that never happened because he couldn't play in the playoffs.
They played with fire the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They got very close to getting burned 2 years ago. They were down in the fourth quarter of the do or die play-in game. And then this year, obviously, he gets hurt. We'll never know, but they were, they weren't going to beat Boston. And it's also, you look at the best teams in the NBA this year, and for a long time we've been in this player rest, since whenever the Spurs basically started doing it, and then a couple of teams, some LeBron teams would, LeBron would take months off at a time, or weeks off at a time. But you look at the teams right now, like that look like the best teams in the playoffs. You've got the Thunder, the Wolves, the Nuggets, the Celtics, right? Those look like the 4 best teams, and I think they had the 4 best records in the regular season. Like there is, who knows if it's just a blip here. There's a bunch of young teams there. Young teams tend to have more availability and kind of go for, like try to prioritize getting a high seed early on, and then once they kind of are proven, let it slide a little bit. But the Nuggets had the best record in the league last year too and won the championship. Like we're kind of in this era potentially, or it looks like we might be shifting into an era where the regular season like kind of matter a little bit more because with the play-in and all that kind of stuff, if you're on the fringes, you play with fire, and it becomes all of a sudden like a really grueling road to get through a couple of rounds here.
Yeah, I think Eric Spoelstra spoke to that during exit interviews on Friday. He said like we don't want to be a play-in team. That's not what we're about. Like, yeah, it's all cute and it's a good story. Last year they made it to the finals, but there's a reason why it was unprecedented. Like an 8 seed had never made it to the NBA finals during a non-lockout shortened season before. Like there's a reason why it never happened. It never happened. Like they want to put themselves in a better position to succeed in the postseason. Like you want to have a top 4 seed and home court advantage in the first round. You don't want to be facing Boston in the first round. Like if the Heat are facing anybody except Boston,
if they were the 6th
seed, they might win that first round.
Yeah, if they're the 6th seed, they're probably the favorite right now to go to the
conference finals,
Western Conference Final or Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it too. Is like it's we did it last year and all that, but we don't want to be dealing with that every season. Like this is 2 straight years now we've had to be in the play-in tournament, and that's not a sustainable formula. We need guys available in the regular season to put ourselves in a better position to have success in the playoffs. Like again, they've had a franchise record amount of starting lineups, 35 starting lineups. I think Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler played 27 games together all season.
And it was the same exact story last year. They probably set a franchise record for lineups last year that they broke this year, I would guess.
It's just, and then they never, then obviously Jimmy was out, Terry Rozier was out for the playoffs. Duncan Robinson was a shell of himself, which, sometimes injuries just happen.
Like, a lot of injuries. Like, we were talking totally differently if like Jimmy doesn't get hurt and they go 7 with Boston.
Right. So I mean, like Pat Riley brought up like conversations with weight trainers and the staff and nutritionists, and maybe every guy has like their own off the court trainer that they work with independently, like making sure those guys, everyone else is on the same page as well. I don't know how you like just make this problem disappear, right? Yeah. Like maybe some of it is just like guys fighting through more injuries, I guess. Like maybe that's some of it. But some of these injuries
that doesn't work either, because you see Jimmy gets hurt in the playoffs, Giannis gets hurt in the playoffs. Like
it happens, right? Like Tyler Hero comes down on a foot and he sprains his ankle and misses a month. Like, what are you gonna do if he has a grade 2 ankle sprain? Like you can't just play through it. So maybe some of it's roster construction. Is it like the fact you have a smaller team, like wear on guys bodies? Like are you? I get what Pat Riley's saying, because it's true. It doesn't matter what roster. Like you can have the best roster in the NBA. If guys aren't going to be available, it doesn't matter. That's the number one problem. But I just don't know if just banking on that being better next season is enough, because most of these injuries were real. So
yeah, that's a problem. I mean, we really liked what they did in terms of depth, and they were much deeper this year. But that depth, which helps you get through a long season, doesn't matter as much if the guys missing games are Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero and whoever else it might be, like you're really important guys. So, yeah, I mean, it's like an easy conversation to have and a hard problem to solve. I think
there's no easy fix. Like there's no concrete. Like okay,
there might not be a fixed period, right? Like if the guys just get hurt, like and Jimmy, like we said, 35, a guy who plays an insanely physical style. I mean, probably like one of the most in shape guys in the league, right? But like when you got all that muscle, like that's easier to pull things and stuff like that. But he needs that like kind of body armor around him to play the way he does. It's you know,
and he might need to pace himself to play that style to be ready for the playoffs.
I mean, that's the thing. You got no problem with it when he carries you to the NBA Finals. The problem is if the injury happens at the wrong time, then what are you gonna do? Like it's not like you'd almost like feel stupid if he paced himself and then just like cruised through the playoffs. Like this year he paced himself and then got hurt. Like I don't know what could he do differently?
Yeah. Can we talk about the viral comment from Pat Riley that like it was kind of like a harmless question and Pat like had a really strong quote and that kind of set Twitter and the internet ablaze where I think Brendan Tobin asked him what did he think about like Jimmy's comment during the case about like if he was healthy, the Boston Celtics would be home and the Knicks would be home. And he answered, well, if you're not on the court playing against Boston or on the court playing against the New York Knicks, you should keep your mouth shut in your criticism of those teams. I think all of us in the room were like, Gordon said that, like, we did not expect that answer. Look, like Pat Riley's old school. It's not like the first time he's done something like this. But it just makes you wonder, like, what's Jimmy's reaction when he sees that like, come up on Instagram, like one of those aggregating like accounts, like that's like just a picture of that quote. Like, what's his reaction? Like, he can't be happy when he sees that quote.
Yeah.
So you
that's
hope
why I'm fascinated to know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, did they talk beforehand? Like, or did he talk? Did they communicate through the agent? Like, what about this is Pat just like shooting from the hip? I mean, it's not shooting from the hip because it's all calculated, obviously. Yeah. But like, how much of this is, like, relaying messages through the media, and how much of it is, they're having these kind of conversations anyway, and Pat's just honest.
Yeah. And probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? Like he didn't know that question was going to be asked. Like it was kind of like one of the final questions asked, and he just gave that answer. Like, I mean, I think all of us were surprised by it. And again, it's not like, I guess it's not super surprising because it's Pat Riley, and he's going to tell you what's on his mind. And he clearly wanted to send a message to Jimmy yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think all like fans from around the NBA were like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? Like, is this gonna work out for the Heat? Like, how is Jimmy gonna take this? It's gonna go one of two ways. Jimmy like likes tough love, which I think he kind of does.
Yeah, that's it. Like
he likes tough love, and he likes people being honest with him and brutally honest. That's the way he is. But what is too much, right?
Well,
like, it's one thing that John's got to play more games, and then this is a little different.
I look at it like kind of the same. They're one of two ways. One is, Jimmy talks like a guy who loves tough love and like all that like Heat culture kind of stuff, right? And he, I believe it or have believed it for basically the entire time he's been here. Part of this is you could say, is Pat challenging him to see how he reacts to something like this? The toughest love he's gotten probably in this period because they've been pretty nice to him. He's deserved it. But I could also see Jimmy being like, "Come on, man! Like, say it to my face.
Right.
Like, don't go to your press conference and say this. Like,
right.
So,
say it behind closed doors. Like, we can deal with this like privately. You don't have to make it into a public thing.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes, like you said, sometimes Pat just like shoots from the hip and it just comes out. Maybe he looks back on it and maybe I guess he regrets it. I don't know, right? We have to ask Pat that. But it's out there, right? The comment has been aggregated by pretty much everybody. I think like I saw like a Fox News headline with Pat Riley's comment, like as a headline. I was like, what is going on here? Right. So I think it's been like made news by everybody pretty much, every outlet out there. So it's, I don't know. I mean, from what I heard yesterday, Jimmy is on vacation or taking time off, and
and
he might not have even seen it like yet, which is kind of surprising, but I guess it's possible. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that'll be a question, even if it's 2-3 months from now, like when next time we talk to Jimmy, that will be a question he'll answer. Like, what did you think when you saw that comment?
Pat, he almost needs to do like a post-game press conference for his press conference.
It's kind of like the Kendrick Drake feud. Like we're just dissecting every lyric. Like we're kind of like going through the interview, like the press conference transcript, but like dissecting every word. Like what was he trying to do there? What was the message behind that? So, I mean, you got to give it to Pat Riley. His press conferences are epic. I mean, they're legendary.
Put that over the Not Like Us beat.
Yeah, I mean, come on. They're legendary.
It's a good thing Damian Lillard's not on this team, or we might get an actual diss track about Pat Riley.
Oh my god. They rarely disappoint, I will say.
Yeah, no, they never disappoint, and some of them are just like on a different level. And this one was this one was one of those.
The most fascinating press conference that will happen this year in South Florida sports, I think, easily. So
yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that could even come close?
I don't think there is.
I mean, the Miami, you can never trust the Miami Hurricanes for too long, right? But
I mean, Pat Riley.
But it's Pat Riley, yeah. We spent most of this talking about Jimmy Butler, but Tyler Hero was obviously also a big topic of conversation. A lot of the same things we're talking about, availability stuff. What would you make of what Pat had to say about him? It's obviously different. He's not the best player on the team, but he's in some ways just as important because he's the third guy in a lot of situations is your kind of pivot guy between being a bona fide contender and being, a playoff team like they've been or like they were this year. What do you make of his comments about Tyler Hero?
Yeah, I mean, the part that stuck out when he called him fragile. He said he's been fragile a little bit. He broke his hand last year in the playoffs, and he had some injuries earlier in his career. But then he said there isn't anybody who works harder at his game. He works and puts the time in. He puts time in the weight room. So how does he keep his calorie intake? So basically, he just kind of went into maybe he just gets stronger. Maybe
I mean, it's a lot of it with him. It's different because Jimmy, it's I think it's like fatigue management and the effects of fatigue and all, it all has to do with how hard and physical he plays. Whereas Tyler Hero, it's you look at his body type, gonna get hurt a lot at that body type, or you have the potential to get hurt a lot with that body type.
Yeah, I just think nobody likes to be called fragile, right?
Fragile.
and if honestly, sometimes people accuse Pat of trying to pump up a guy's trade value or whatever, that. If Pat was trying to do that with Tyler Hero, that was.
He did not do that yesterday with anyone, I don't think.
No. So just very honest and blunt. And again, I would think that if he's saying that to us, he has said that to Tyler Hero.
It's not news, yeah.
It's not news. I'm sure Tyler Hero doesn't want that said in a press conference setting of that he's fragile. But hey, when you work with Pat Riley, that's just something's gonna happen. But he did while he did call him fragile, he did compliment him saying he was a hard worker, that he's a shot taker and shot maker, and it's on the team to kind of give him more room to do that. Then I think he was asked a follow-up question about UD's comments that Tyler should be a sixth man, and Pat Riley was basically no, he's a starter. He's a starter in this league. So he complimented him, and he kind of pushed back on the notion that he's better off the bench. So there, it almost he was tougher on Jimmy, honestly, than Tyler.
Well, I think the standards are higher for Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
It's
And the extension, I think, plays a role, right? If you want this money, if you want this contract, you got to do this, right? I think that's why it's challenging him so much.
This is the first time in the Jimmy Butler era where it's legitimately felt like we don't know what the next 6 months are going to look like. We always, for the last 5 years, I know people are, there's people are on the trade machine or whatever all the time, but it always was, what are they going to do next to Jimmy Butler? This is the first time where it feels like Bam is more central to the future than Jimmy. Even I don't think they were ever going to trade Bam, but if the Giannis thing had ever happened, right? Probably a chance Bam was going to be the guy going out. Now I think Bam is number one most untouchable, and Jimmy is. I think they certainly want to keep him. They want to figure out what the next couple. Like you said, it's not like he wants a an extension that's going to take him into his 40s. He wants an extension that's going to
37. Yeah.
Take him 37 and try to extend this window as much as they can. But
yeah, and look, and to your point about Bam, like he's up for an extension this year too. And I don't think there's any question like whether he's going to get it or not. I think it's like kind of like given, like he's going to get the extension.
Telling that there was not a lot of Bam talk at the press conference because I think it was there. Like, what was there to say? He was awesome this year.
Yeah,
and he is what he is. Like he's not ever going to be an elite offensive player, but it's not what they're asking him to be.
Right. He's elite defensively, arguably the best player on defensive player in the league, and he's a 20 points per game scorer as well. Can he lead an offense by himself? No, but he's a very good complementary offensive player who could score 30 on any given night. So yeah, I think there was one question on Bam, and Pat Riley praised him, and that was it. And again, I don't think there's any question whether he's going to get his extension or not.
Yeah.
The big question is with Jimmy, not because Pat Riley said like the biggest needle mover for us is Jimmy. Like it's not Bam, it's Jimmy.
Yeah.
I think the question with Jimmy is again the age, obviously a lot older than Bam, different part of his career, and he's just not available as much as Bam. So.
Yeah. I mean, if they have Jimmy next year, they'll still be, no one's going to be looking at them as one of the favorites to win the championship, but there's still you look at the way the East is right now, like it could still be
home court advantage, like top 4 seed, yeah.
Yeah, top 4 seed. Like other than Boston, like Milwaukee's got so many question marks, but if Giannis is healthy, then you're gonna view them still as the probably number 2. And Philly, who knows what's gonna happen with them? They've got a lot of the same problems I think that the Heat do, but have had a lot less success over the last 5 years than the Heat have had. So if you have Jimmy on this roster next year, and I think we'd both be surprised if he's not on the roster, but there'll certainly be rumors over the next couple of months here about what's going to happen. But if he's on the roster, you're going to feel like you've at least got a chance to, make the Eastern Conference Finals. And if he's not, then you should still be a playoff team, but you move into a different phase where you're retooling a little bit. So you definitely don't want to have to get rid of him this offseason, and you don't want to, but you also want to be smart with the extension.
Yeah, I honestly don't think the Heat want him on the team. That's not a question,
obviously.
Right? It's more like because they know like Jimmy is the guy who raised the ceiling of this team.
Right.
Right. Like he raised the ceiling to a team that can make the conference finals, a team that can make the NBA finals. Without him, again, you saw what it was like without him against the Celtics. Like you're a good team, but you're just not an elite team. And you struggle on. They struggle on offense with Jimmy. Like without Jimmy, they're going to be one of the worst offensive teams in the league. So you kind of had a preview of what it would be like without Jimmy in that Boston series. So I think they want Jimmy here. It's more about can they make it work? Is Jimmy going to change his requests and be patient? And
right. The challenge,
give the Heat time to figure it out. Like
they want him here. The question is, will they rather have him? The decision eventually might become, would we rather? We have 2 options. It's not we have him here or we don't have him here. It's we have him here with an extension or we don't have him here. Like that's a possibility that they might have to think about over the next couple of months here.
Yeah, and they could get to the point too of like if they don't give him the extension, maybe Jimmy said, this is hypothetical. Like Jimmy says, well, okay, fine, I'll play out this year and have a player option the following year. I'm going to opt out. Like, I'm letting you know right now I'm opting out of the player option, and I'm going to test free agency. At that point here and say, do we just keep him for a year and risk losing him for nothing, or do we trade him and try to get something back? So there are a lot of things left to be determined with the situation. All we know is it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
And right now it's really hard to predict what's going to happen, other than the fact that the Heat aren't just going to give him an extension. I think that much is clear. Like they're not just going to give like last time where it was like, what do you want, Jimmy? You want that? Okay. We're going to give like 3 years ago when they gave him that extension. It was kind of like not much of a fight at all.
Yeah.
I think this year
there's going to be a negotiation.
Tough negotiation.
Not a negotiation about the money available because the money is set, right? It's a negotiation about.
No, they could offer less, but I just don't think
they're not going to.
Yeah. No.
But it's going to be a negotiation about what are these next 2 years going to look like.
Right.
Here. All right. What's your prediction? Do they extend him? After you said it's impossible to predict, or I don't remember exactly what you just said, but
entering Pat Riley's press conference, I said I thought they would just do it, like take the path of least resistance. Like they really kind of have no other option at this point without taking a big step back. And again, it's only adding pretty much one more year to the contract. But after hearing Pat Riley yesterday, I am not so sure anymore. So I'm going to take the easy way out and say, I don't know. But my prediction before the Pat Riley press conference was they are going to end up giving it to him, the contract he wants. But after hearing Pat Riley, it left me hesitant to feel that way.
I still feel like they're going to give it to him because it's just one more year. It's like the worst case scenario is like you one extra frustrating year and then figure it out. But it's certainly like the yesterday changed the thinking. I think from the outside perspective a lot about what these next couple of months are going to look like. It's pretty much exactly 2 months as we're talking right now until they have to make a decision. So
we'll plenty of time to talk about this over the next 2 months.
Plenty of time to talk about it. I mean, the league has plenty of time to change, right? We'll see what some of the other, Phillies, like I said, is going through their own, I think, kind of existential crisis right now. You got the Clippers going through an existential crisis. You got the Lakers, the Suns. Like, there's a lot of it feels like
Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's a name that's always going to be linked to the Heat. Like, if the Cavs lose in the second round, like, so yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, this feels like a potential where there's the most like player movement shifting type. Not at the top of the league, like, because I think we're in a new generation at the top, right? Where Boston, Denver, Minnesota, OKC, I think all feel pretty good about whatever happens this year, probably just running it back with their group, with tinkering on the margins. But all the other teams that feel like they should be there and feel like their windows are closing, and I think they all sense that they got to figure out what the next, I don't want to say make some changes, but got to figure out what their next couple of years are going to look like now, both the teams and the stars.
I agree. No, this is a huge offseason because it could mark the end of this era, or it could, I think at the very the last kind of phase of this era, right? Like it's hard for me to believe they're just going to bring this core back as is. Mm-hmm. They can't do that. They can't just for 6 years bring this exact same core back. I think there has to be, maybe it's not Jimmy, maybe it's not Bam, but it's probably not going to be Bam. I can almost guarantee that. Won't be.
Yeah.
But there has to be some changes because I think it would be a mistake to just bring this roster back and just basically bank on player availability fixing issues.
Yeah.
Because player availability now has been an issue for multiple seasons, not just this year. So at some point you have to look at like, is this roster is that a weakness, a flaw of this roster? Like, too many guys are.
Right. That's the question they got to figure out. Is it a flaw with this roster, or is it some bad cultural development they've had over the last couple of years? Which we've definitely seen with some teams. Although sometimes you never know, right? Like, is the Clippers problem, like, is it bad culture with the injury and availability, or is it just that Kawhi can't stay healthy? Like, sometimes you hope it's one thing, and it really is the worst. The worst thing is that it's not a bad culture thing, and it's it's something can be fixed. Yeah, exactly. But that might be the problem. So who knows? All right, you guys can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. I don't know, what are you up to now? You got some time off a little bit. You going to Cancun too? Galveston?
I wish. I mean, between exit interviews and Pat Riley, I have enough content probably for like.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing.
And then once 4 weeks passes, it's like draft time, and then free agency and summer league. So things slow down obviously a lot.
Yeah.
And this is an extra month of the offseason I'm not used to, especially the last few years.
I know it's been a long. I mean, I guess but even the year when they got bounced early, that was the
shorter offseason.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but I mean, especially this offseason with the Heat, like with the Jimmy stuff and everything swirling around that. There's more than enough to keep me busy. So I think I'll be pretty much busy until August, once everything dies down and maybe this is decided. We know the outcome of this, the Jimmy Butler situation.
Yeah. All right, you can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. That's about it. I'm just tweeting about basketball these days. I'm kind of falling in love with the Timberwolves like I fell in love with the early Warriors, which does not make me unique, I understand, but it's very fun to have like a new kind of out of nowhere team.
Yeah, I just like that there's new blood, like in the playoffs, and like a new contender that kind of came out of nowhere.
I'm really, really pumped for the Olympics.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. Anthony Edwards is awesome. Like he's just.
They gotta get Jalen Brunson on that somehow, though.
I agree. I'm surprised he's not on the team, especially since he was
on the World Cup. We'll see if Kawhi, because Kawhi's hurt. He's on the roster. We'll see.
And who knows with Embiid? Embiid too.
But if Embiid's out, they need to add a center. So
yeah.
I was saying, so if Embiid is healthy enough to play, he's gonna be the starting center. If not, is Bam it's gonna be like Steph Curry, LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Bam.
Bam was the starting center last Olympics.
It was, but it's just this roster is like
is a little bit
4 of the
stars on it. Yeah,
biggest names and biggest stars in NBA history, and
maybe Anthony Davis.
I guess Anthony Edwards has to start at shooting guard, huh? Anthony Davis. Yeah, that probably would be what they would do.
And Bam off the bench. I think Bam doesn't play a big role no matter what, just because he's just such a complimentary guy with those lineups who doesn't need the ball.
Yeah.
And can just is versatile, kind of plug into whatever role. But yeah, I would think Embiid will start if he's healthy, and if not, probably Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's probably right. Especially if they go with like let the old guys have. It might become Anthony Edwards' team at some point over there, but they're gonna let LeBron, Steph, KD, I think, like be the faces of the team at least to start.
Yeah, I agree. It should be. It'll be a fun team to watch for sure because of all the names on it, like you said.
Yeah, and so it's Steph's first Olympics, which is pretty crazy.
That's kind of crazy. That's crazy. Has he competed with the national team before? But like in
probably when he was younger. But then he, they were going deep in the playoffs so often, and then he was hurt. I think the year he got hurt was an Olympic year, so it's just been like it has not, just for whatever reason, not worked out.
Yeah, it's another thing to look forward to this offseason.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again for listening. We will talk to you guys next week.